Well, here we are again. This is Carolyn Gilbert on the prairie in Texas. And at the other end is Dr. Corey Franklin in Chicago. Corey, you have some really interesting things to say to us today, I know. Before you get into that, though, I wanted to say that today I went to a meeting of our Regional Historical Society. And those people know that I'm interested in obituaries, and every once in a while they'll venture out of their comfort zone and ask me a question or two, and just referring to me as the obituary lady. And so one of my table mates said, "You're the obituary lady, aren't you?" And I graciously acknowledged that. She said, "How do you get that information? I mean, do you interview those people?" And I said, "Well, no, they're dead. Very often you don't have that opportunity to interview people, and you must gather the research that you have. And of course, if you're lucky enough to be able to interview in advance for an advancer obituary, very often the individual will say, 'Now, when do you expect this to run?' And the seasoned obituarist will say, 'Well, that sort of depends on you.' So, Corey, I'm always curious as to how you, as a doctor, became interested in obituaries. I remember our first meeting by telephone, which had to do with your collection of obituaries. Now, talk to me about that.
Well, Carolyn, being in intensive care, I saw a lot of people die for a long time. And what I learned while I was doing that was that everybody had a story. And I became interested in people's stories, first around the hospital. And then I started reading the obituary pages of the newspaper and realized that these were all great stories, As my friend Jim Nicholson said, is if the articles didn't have he died or she died in it, it would just be a wonderful story. So then I started reading more and more obituary pages from around the country and in England, where they do them wonderfully, and it just naturally occurred from there.
I wanted our listeners to know that you, coming from a profession that you do, have made great use of it and have realized what those of us who really adore the art of the obituary have realized for a long time, that everyone is a story. Whether they're famous or whether they're broke, it doesn't matter. There's a story there somewhere. And the good writer will find that little nugget and run with it to make an obituary that is fitting for an individual.
Thanks, Carolyn. You nailed it. Well, Carolyn, Leslie Nielsen died this week, and I thought we'd talk about him a little bit. He will be known as one of the great comic actors, one of the great film comedians of the second half of the 20th century. You don't think of him in terms of Chaplin or Keaton or the Marx Brothers, but if you look at his body of work in the last 2 decades of the 20th century, it certainly measures up. And one of the interesting things about Leslie Nielsen is that, unlike many film comedians, he never took himself too seriously outside of the industry. He was a guy with a great sense of humor, and he wasn't one of those guys who was depressed or morose or, longed to play Hamlet. He was the kind of guy you saw on the screen, and he liked to have fun with whoopee cushions and fart guns and things like that. Leslie Nielsen was Canadian. In fact, one of his brothers ultimately became the Deputy Prime Minister of Canada. He was also a nephew of the famous actor Jean Hersholt. He started out actually in serious pictures. He started out in a movie called Forbidden Planet. And I know a couple of weeks ago we did The Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And Forbidden Planet is another one of the great sci-fi movies of the mid-50s. It's actually the retelling of the story of Shakespeare's The Tempest. It has Walter Pidgeon mugging it up, and it has a young Anne Francis, and nobody was hotter than a young Anne Francis. And it has Leslie Nielsen as the space traveler who meets them on their planet. Here's a clip from Forbidden Planet from 1956.
Sir, we're being radar scanned. United Planets Cruiser C-57D, J.J. Adams commanding. Who are you?
Morbius of the Bellerophon.
But Dr. Morbius, my orders are to survey the situation on Altair 4. Commander, if you set down on this planet, I warn you that I cannot be answerable for the safety of your ship or your crew. When you reach the Forbidden Planet, you will meet Dr. Morbius, played by Walter Pidgeon. The Doctor is sole owner of this fabulous world. Anne Francis is his alluring daughter, Alta, who has never seen a young man till she meets Commander Adams, played by talented Leslie Nielsen.
Come on in.
Can you bring my bathing suit?
What's a bathing suit?
Oh, murder.
He was supposed to be playing it straight there, but I'm not sure he wasn't mugging it up even in Forbidden Planet, which had a lot of potential for mugging it up. It had the robot that I think they used the same robot in Lost in Space 10 years later. So he may have been mugging it up. His career didn't really go very far. He did Tammy on The Bachelor. You know, we did some Tammy stuff when Eddie Fisher died. He did Tammy on The Bachelor, and he really wasn't going anywhere. Although he turned out to be a very, very good television actor. And in fact, he starred in one of my favorite television episodes of all time. It is the retelling of H.G. Wells' The Magic Shop on Alfred Hitchcock Presents. Might be the best episode ever of Alfred Hitchcock. And I actually think the telling on Alfred Hitchcock was better than the actual H.G. Wells story. And he played the father of a little boy. Here he is. He's lost in the magic shop. The magician has disappeared, and he doesn't know where his son has gone. In fact, he's not even sure there ever was a magic shop or a magician.
Where is he? Where's my boy? Where's my boy? What are you doing? Get my boy!
Yeah, trust me when I tell you, Leslie Nielsen was real good in that, and believe me, there might not have ever been a scarier hour on television than the Alfred Hitchcock telling of The Magic Shop. Anyway, Leslie Nielsen's career was sort of poking along in 60 TV shows, and he had one other fairly memorable performance, but he was in the early 1970s flick The Poseidon Adventure. He wasn't one of the major stars. He was the captain of the ship who spotted the huge tidal wave that's going to trap Ernest Borgnine and Shelley Winters and Gene Hackman and all those other big stars.
In the early morning hours of New Year's Eve, the SS Poseidon, en route from New York to Athens, was struck by a 90-foot tidal wave.
Oh, my God.
And capsized. Irwin Allen's production of The Poseidon Adventure.
Yeah, did you catch him there? That was him saying, oh my God, with that tidal wave coming, and that was the end of him in that movie. You didn't hear much from Leslie Nielsen for a couple of years after that. There wasn't much going on in his career, and then he really lucked out. And he lucked out when he was picked to do a TV satire of Dragnet called Police Squad. And the show, by some accounts very funny, other accounts not very funny, was canceled after 4 episodes. And it was the best thing that ever happened to him. Because that satire show led to him getting the role as the doctor in Airplane. And we talked about Airplane a couple of weeks ago when Barbara Billingsley died, and the jive scene that she did in that movie. But Leslie Nielsen was the star of Airplane, and that led to 20 years of satire. Here's some scenes from Airplane.
You'd better tell the captain we've got to land as soon as we can. This woman has to be gotten to a hospital.
A hospital? What is it?
It's a big building with patients, but that's not important right now. Tell the captain I must speak to him.
Certainly.
Captain, how soon can you land?
I can't tell.
You can tell me I'm a doctor.
No, I mean, I'm just not sure.
Or can't you take a guess?
Well, not for another 2 hours.
You can't take a guess for another 2 hours?
No, I mean, we can't land for another 2 hours.
What was it we had for dinner tonight?
Well, we had a choice, steak, fish.
Yes, I remember I had lasagna.
And of course, one of the great lines in all of movies, and in fact the line for which Leslie Nielsen will be remembered forever.
Can you fly this plane and land it?
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
And after that, he got the Naked Gun series, which was, again, satire Dragnet in the movies. that the Zucker brothers did, and he got all sorts of other satires after that. I mean, you can't go through them all. It would, you can't do them justice. So I'll just give you a couple of lines that are from the Naked Gun series and from some of his other movies. And anybody who doesn't know Leslie Nielsen can get a real feel for what kind of comedy he did as the equivalent to the American Inspector Clouseau as Lieutenant Frank Drebin.
Frank Drebin, police squad. And don't ever let me catch you guys in America.
I don't want any more trouble like you had last year on the South Side. Understand? That's my policy.
Yes, well, when I see 5 weirdos dressed in togas stabbing a guy in the middle of the park in full view of 100 people, I shoot the bastards. That's my policy.
That was a Shakespeare in the Park production of Julius Caesar, you moron.
Who are you, and how did you get in here? I'm the locksmith. And I'm the locksmith.
I have a message for you from Vincent Ludwig. I'm sorry I can't hear you. Don't fire the gun while you're talking.
And of course, in those Naked Gun movies, his female foil was Priscilla Presley, and he probably had more fun with Priscilla in those movies than Elvis had with her in real life. They had a great witty repartee together.
How about dinner? I know this little out-of-the-way place serves great Viking food.
That's quite a tempting offer, Lieutenant. But I'm afraid I'm going to have to get my rest this evening. Tomorrow being Arbor Day and all.
Of course. Well, perhaps some other time.
How about a rain check?
Well, let's just stick to dinner.
Yeah, we're going to miss that. Thank you very much, Leslie Nielsen. Leslie Nielsen once explained how he was so successful with this type of comedy. What he said was, you must be serious about doing your spoof, and you must always go for credibility. If the audience for 1 second starts to feel that you are in on the joke, that's the end of it, and it's over. Sign off, we're going to give you a little Naked Gun music. And of course, one last time.
Surely there must be something you can do.
I'm doing everything I can. Now stop calling me Shirley.
Carolyn, any thoughts on Leslie Nielsen before we move on?
Well, surely I do have some thoughts.
Don't call me Shirley.
Oh, my God. Well, it occurs to me in particular with Leslie Nielsen that even though we know we learn from obituaries, from the life stories, we sometimes put people in a box. Now, pardon the pun. We put them into however it is we have conceived them. And in Leslie Nielsen's case, his early acting was as a serious actor. And then later he found his soul, he found his comic timing and the button that he could push to turn that on. And I'm just wondering how many others were like that we just automatically thought of in a one-dimensional way, and actually there were other things in their life or in their personality, and some of them even in their performing arts. One that I think of right away is Frank Sinatra. We knew him as a teenage thriller, and he had to beg for a serious role in movies. And when he did beg for that serious role, he won an Academy Award for it.
The thing about Leslie Nielsen that was so amazing was, again, he was sort of the serious actor for a while, and there was this comedian that was looking to get out. And the amazing thing is that he reveled in it. I mean, a lot of guys at his age would not have wanted to switch roles like they did, and
Right.
Very few of them would have reveled in it like he did. So, there probably are, but I can't think of anybody offhand who switched so dramatically and did so successfully.
Well, I think that's right. He is a prime example. I think of one who's still alive, but one who only fairly recently has shown another side, and that's Steve Martin. little did we know from the comic things that he has done in the past that he was a serious banjo player. He often had his little banjo with him, and I really thought it was kind of a prop. But, in the last 6 months or so, he has been on various television programs to show that he is a serious musician. They write their own music, he and his band. They perform when it's not comedy, it's just music. So that, of course, will be prominent in his obituary, you can be sure.
Well, I hope we don't have to do Steve Martin for a while, but it will be an interesting.
Me too.
Well, Shirley, that's enough for tonight. And stop calling me Shirley. That's all, folks. We'll see you next week.
Oh, the merry-go-round broke down. It made the darndest sound. The lights went low. We both said, oh, and the merry-go-round went